Ahoy there, mateys. Let me tell you a spooky tale to rattle your bones. Candle Cove is a great story. It's so simple but effective. Users on a forum talk about an eerie kid show they saw in the 70s, with more and more grim details revealed through their conversation. Eventually, it culminates in a twist where we're left to wonder if the show had some supernatural origin. It's a great ending. A lot of famous urban legends and campfire stories have that kind of twist. Not talking about it this year, but the one with the babysitter and the clown statue comes to mind. The only flaw I can see is that the skin taker is too on the nose to be something casually brushed off. Yes, it was the 70s, but no small children's puppet show would have a character like that. Parroting talking points from Jenny Nicholson again, I see. Yeah, just wait for my 4-hour Star Wars hotel video. With any creepypasta that's good, people feel the need to expand on it and make their own versions that nearly all miss the point of the original. Last year I talked about Channel Zero, a TV series that used Candle Cove as a jumping off point for their own larger mystery. Before that, a whole bunch of stories came out that pretty much tried to do the same thing, but bad, all by different authors with no real continuity, but they're all listed on the Creepypasta Wiki and or have readings available on YouTube, so I figured we'd take a little detour on our high seas adventure to talk about the forgotten lore of Candle Cove. Two stories in particular gave us the baseline for the Candle Cove extended universe.
Memoirs of a Set Designer by unknown author.
And Candle Cove Experiences, Tales of the Laughingstock by Ishmael Dugan. At a glance, it points to the latter being the first, but for various reasons we'll get into, I think that's highly unlikely. Both center around the cast and crew of the Candle Cove show, rather than recounting it from a child's perspective. The show was the brainchild of one Emerson Grimes, a man with the most evil-sounding name ever. According to both, Grimes was mentally disturbed and demanded all types of scary things be in the show, including the famous screaming episode. Attaching a cast and crew to the show instantly makes it less scary and raises all kinds of questions, and not the good kind, like, oh, what was that all about? More like, why would anybody be involved in something like this and not intervene? Or how did nobody realize that this show is only able to be seen by children? Memoirs of a Set Designer is done well for what it is. Anonymous set designer recounts their experience on board the show. Descriptions of certain things are realistic, like this is someone who actually worked in showbiz. The other one, with the long name I won't bother to say, let's get into it. I was shocked how low quality it was, and how it's still up on creepypasta.com. It's one of the worst stories I've read so far, and is borderline incomprehensible. There's a lot of phrasing that doesn't make sense, really weird spelling errors. The author wrote trudged up, like dredged up. That's gonna be a part of my vocabulary for years to come. If you look at the storytelling, a lot of it doesn't make sense either, or is really unintentionally funny. Gonna encourage you to read it blind and come back to see what I mean. If you want spoilers, it's structured like 1999, kind of. You can tell the author really wants to do 1999. He goes around to all these different people and all of them are like, how dare you bring back these horrible memories? And some of them have mental breakdowns over it every time. This happens like thrice. The author is like, yeah, I'm sorry about that. He sets out to interview Janice, who is the little girl on the show, and he starts by writing their conversation in quotes like, okay, this is the interview. But no, that's him asking for the interview. Why did that need to be in quote? The author censors his own name out of anonymity, but for some reason doesn't have the courtesy to do that with any of the crew members he gets in contact with. Please read it yourself. I'm sacrificing my YouTube watch time by not recapping every single strange decision the author makes. I think we would be here all day if that were the case. The names of the cast and crew are the same between these two stories, leading me to think that one incorporated them from the other. For some reason, Laughingstock pulls in a bunch of random character names that I've never heard before. Nathan is a character that was proposed for Candle Cove in Memoirs, but is mentioned with no context in this. Melrose also gets brought up. She has a page on the Candle Cove fandom wiki, which we'll get into, but I have no idea where she comes from. Hudo Hoodlum's Revenge went for years covering awful creepypastas, but never once managed to find this one for whatever reason. It would have fit right in one of his top 10s. Emerson Grimes is mentioned again in a shorter story titled The Journal of Damian Green. Like Tales from the Laughingstock, it follows someone tracking down some Candle Cove info, 1999 style. This one I could only find on the Spin Pasta wiki, which is a testament to its quality. For context, the Spin Pasta wiki is mainly populated by stuff like Dark Bubble Guppies Kills THX Logo 666 2004 variant.exe, and anything within that sphere. It is somehow both less and more embarrassing than the story being on the Troll Pasta wiki. Tier list goes creepypasta.com, Creepypasta fandom wiki, Creepypasta files wiki, Troll Pasta wiki, Spin Pasta wiki. Anyways, This story doesn't describe exactly how Damien finds the episodes of Candle Cove. It does describe the weird sexual overtones that the show has for some reason in this one. Moving on, the Grimes home still perpetuates our friends Grimesy as the Candle Cove mastermind, but the story itself isn't related to the show all that much. Our author, the brother of Emerson, comes back to his childhood home to clear it out after his mother passes away. In the basement, he finds a bunch of Candle Cove puppets and starts to see visions being haunted by some Lovecraftian entity called the Signal. It's implied that both Emerson and the mom were taken by this force, and that the Signal somehow beamed the idea for Candle Cove into Emerson's head. Interesting, but it doesn't stand out. Going into a creepy house with a scary thing in the basement isn't my type of thing. 60% of Reddit no-sleep stories follow that formula. The timeline also makes no sense, because in other stories, Emerson Grimes is said to be an old man when he was showrunning on Candle Cove, so why would his mother have just passed away in the story? I think it's the first Candle Cove spinoff we're talking about today that does the thing, where they use a line from the original and the reader is supposed to say, "Ha, I know where that's from." I think the "you have to go inside" line coming from Emerson's childhood is interesting, but I can't shake the feeling that it's the same as some stupid modern Hollywood prequel movie. The next few stories we're going to be talking about are pretty far removed, focusing on random victims of the show. Some are more interesting, while others fall into being kind of nothing. Candle Cove Day of the Dead manages to be funny and actually creepy at the same time. It's framed as a therapy session with our protagonist, so the format is pretty unique. This back and forth leads to her trudging up ancient memories of watching Candle Cove as a kid, before I assume she either has a mental break or her soul gets taken by Candle Cove. It dips into unintentional humor when the therapist starts peppering Candle Cove iconography into their dialogue. I can't describe why, but it reads like a Twitter shitpost. The way everything starts fading into Candle Cove is pretty creepy in its own way. The only one of these stories today that's managed to actually creep me out. Lullaby Rock incorporates some kind of sci-fi angle to its twist, which goes for something close to the original. Main character comes home one day and catches Candle Cove on the TV, where a before unseen mermaid character sings a song that puts him to sleep, and he wakes up 2 years later having been in a coma. Our twist at the end is that the main character's mom gets some kind of check from NASA, meaning either Candle Cove was some kind of experiment gone wrong, or she willingly made her kid a test subject of some kind. Makes you think. Down in the Dark follows the main character's experience finally catching Candle Cove on TV after her friends keep bringing it up. Naturally, the show scares her so bad, she runs upstairs from the basement where the TV is to get her dad to turn it off. When he goes down there, it's implied that Candle Cove did something to him. For the rest of his life, he has weird bouts of staring off into space and other weird symptoms. After he passes, the main character goes back to the house where the incident happens and hears that same Candle Cove music coming from the basement she did all those years ago. Like Grimes, it gives me the vibe of some random Reddit story with the Candle Cove skin. Not like that makes it a bad story. Thought it was alright. The leather cape has a somewhat compelling twist, but the main story isn't doing anything for me. The main character gets the object in question from a sketchy old man at a flea market, and it's played completely straight. It also has this line: "For those who were curious, I did not succeed in getting in her pants," but that's inconsequential to the story. Thanks, main character. I also discovered a new trope to dislike. The old guy who sells him the skin taker puppet is like needlessly rude to him. I said, are you gonna buy it, or are you just gonna stand there all day molesting it? Come on, kid, I gotta go on lunch. Nobody talks like that. I don't know. At least where I live, it's customary to talk someone up while they're looking to buy something from you. And if he was going to lunch, wouldn't he try and make it more of an incentive for him to buy it then? You know, be nice. This guy's a bad businessman, that's all. All these disparate tales do come together. The Candle Cove fandom wiki is a thing, and it's pretty thorough for something like this. Of course, a lot of it is generated by the public, and a little bit hard to wrap your head around, but it's not hard to see that effort. Candle Cove is begging for a modern retelling through an ARG or spooky YouTube series. Even if people don't have the resources to make puppets, 3D animation software is way more accessible than it was 15 years ago. You could totally make your own Candle Cove now, and you don't have to follow the original. Through reading all I could from the Grimes verse, I think it would be cool to do a reimagining where Candle Cove in-universe was a larger production, maybe like all those actual puppet or live-action mascot shows from the time, where it was well-liked in the 70s, but people now don't really care about it, and you could have commentary on the entertainment industry. If it was an actual production and not psychically beamed into kids' heads, why would any parent put their child on a show where there's skin-stealing skeletons and an episode of only crying and screaming, unless they're a horrible showbiz parent? And you can have Emerson Grimes be some nasty producer who gets out of hand, and maybe there's sinister supernatural things that go on. People can steal that idea if they want. Candle Cove, Dan Schneider edition.